Hello, good morning, and welcome to Wish Talk, an interview series where we learn more about the Wish Revolution and how our collaborators are responding to the COVID-19 pandemic. My name is Kenny Murillo, and I am a research associate at the Center for Global Women's Health Technologies. Today, we have the privilege of interviewing Dr. Wesley Hogan. Dr. Hogan is the director of the Center for Documentary Studies at Duke University. She is a research professor at the Franklin Humanities Institute and the Department of History. She writes and teaches the history of youth, social movements, human rights, documentary, and oral history. Thank you so much for being with us today, Dr. Hogan.
Thanks for having me, Kenny.
So our first question for today, how have you seen art being used to deal, address, and contribute to the pandemic crisis? And how are you using art to do those things?
So I think the arts in general across the world have been one way that people are coping with this enormous, huge change that everybody's experiencing. So we can see it all over the place. People are using art in their day-to-day lives. They're making art. So there's a huge uptick in just the ways people are using their hands to build things, to draw things, to knit, to paint, to build. But then also music and dance and film. People are making playlists. D-Nice, the way that people are using Instagram Live to create dance parties, to find a way to connect socially when they can't be together physically. I even was able to participate in a virtual theater experience last weekend where people, a dance troupe they went to the theater and performed, and then they had a talk back after the show. So we all were on Zoom and just seeing it. And it wasn't the same as being there live, but it was really beautiful. And the hard work that they'd put in for months and months to prepare for this launch, they could actually share it. But then, of course, there are ways that people are in our own lives using the arts to express what we're feeling, which is so important as a way to process something that so many of us have never, ever experienced. This enormous shutdown of our daily lives. And so people are using writing and journaling or the visual arts or movement, not only to express their feelings about the incredible catastrophe of the way the pandemic is moving through communities in very unequal ways, hitting some communities much harder than others, and people have very different and unequal access to resources to cope with that. But then in the horrific and unequal ways that we're seeing leadership respond to these inequalities. So in the last week and a half, the way that systemic police violence has racked the United States, and national leadership has responded in incredibly uneven ways. Some people responding callously and others responding with great compassion, and people have very few outlets for dealing with the enormous range of emotions that they have. And so you've seen this outpouring there of the arts as well, people using particularly music, chanting and music and theater, and there's a beautiful, beautiful clarinet performance that maybe 35-year-old man did in his living room and posted to Twitter, and then he literally got down on 2 knees and was just quiet. And so the arts have been, when we're at a loss for words, sometimes the arts are our only way to share our feelings and literally be seen by fellow human beings.
A lot of thoughts here, Dr. Hogan. So in my culture, it's very patriarchal and there's a lot of machismo. Dyeing a male dyeing his hair is not very common, and is not generally something seen very positively by older adults. And in my case, when you were saying, talking about art, this is actually something, it's my first time dyeing my hair in 26 years. I've never done it before. And it's very liberating. I forget that it's dyed. And when I look at myself in the mirror, I'm like, oh, it's me. And it's a break from everything, from the world, from everything that's going on. And it's a moment that I can experience with myself. And dancing is the other thing that has really helped me. I miss dancing so much. Sometimes I do feel guilty when I get wrapped up in the moment when I'm by myself listening to music and dancing, because then I have thoughts about the ugliness that's going on, and especially with this weekend police brutality. I don't know if you follow a lot of pop culture, but Lady Gaga's new CD, Chromatica, just came out, and I've been listening to it, and it really takes you to the dance floor. It just transports you there. And I've been finding myself enjoying the album, but then trying not to indulge so much in it, because
no, I have a really strong feelings about that.
Tell me.
Okay, this is just my opinion, obviously, but I feel like joy is hugely important to energy. And if you want to have the joy or the energy to fight for a just world and to build that just world, as I know you, Kenny Murillo, are going to do and build so much of that just world.
Thank you.
You need to have joy, and joy as energy there's no better way than dance. I mean, people get there all different kinds of roads, but if one of your roads is dancing, then you need to have everything you can possibly have in your world. And guilt is got to get that, as much out of your, put that in the ash heap, forget that. Because I guess I understand when there's so much pain and horror happening around us. I'm in my beautiful yard and I have, green space, but I need that because so much of my life right now is like a real grind. I'm trying to do all this work to get money for artists whose economy has completely collapsed in the last 12 weeks of the pandemic.
Yeah.
So I'm in a lot of grind right now. And so I need to find these spaces so Lady Gaga for me is inspiring as hell, but she's not my energy because I'm not hip enough for her. You know what I mean? She's just a little like Janelle Monáe is where so we can talk about that later, but whatever it is, you have to let yourself, I think, I'll use the me. I have to let myself have that joy and build it up. It's not only resistance and energy for all of that toxicity we have to fight, but it also allows us to imagine forward, right? Imagine that world we're trying to build. And I think for these kinds of moments where the whole world is in some kind of spasm of both leaving that toxic world behind and trying to build something new, we need a lot of huge amount of energy. We were just talking about a family member who's given birth. You saw what is required to give birth. It is like nothing anyone else has ever seen. So imagine that on a global scale. I think that's what's happening here. One world is dying and another one's trying to be born, and it's no one who's currently living has ever been through that. We need all the energy and young people vision, people like you that we can. Okay, sorry, that's really not your question.
No, don't be sorry
at all. Feel guilty.
Thank you, Dr. Hogan. I think we need the mentors like you, I look up to you. So for those watching, Dr. Hogan and I, we were in a class together. I had the opportunity to be a student, TA sort of, for a storytelling, community building class, and and I look up to you, Dr. Hogan, and you exude this energy, and you have a way of influencing people. You've definitely made a difference in me and how I see the world, and what world the new world that I want to see and live in, and I want my nephews and my nieces to grow up in.
Um,
With that, the second question, what place do you think art and creativity have in altering traditional or outdated health narratives?
Artists are really good at helping us get out of old grooves that don't serve us. So you and I know, like when we get up in the morning, there's certain patterns every human does, right? Every human gets up in the morning and there's like certain routines we get in, and medical care is no different, right? Hospitals, clinics, everybody gets into patterns. In fact, best available care is a thing, right? Standard care of practice is a thing. There's a certain set of patterns or rules that we follow in order to provide that standard level of care, and people are proud of those. But what happens if they're wrong? We need imagination to dream beyond those practices. And sometimes they're terribly wrong, and we really need to imagine beyond them. And so one of the things that we've been trying to do with the artists in the project that you were just referring to is to have artists come in and help us imagine narratives, particularly for reproductive and sexual health care.
Mhm.
So how can we imagine, for instance, an environment where sexual health care is not something that women are ashamed of, where it's just normal. It's as normal as women going to get, I don't know, lunch.
Mhm.
Right now, most women around the world dread their annual physical exam. They would not think about it like going to get lunch. And so we asked artists to help us imagine that, because they're really good at that. They don't think in boxes. They hate boxes. They, you just talked about how much energy it gives you when you look in the mirror and you see your beautiful hair. Well, artists, like if you think about most artists' physical appearance, they do that all the time. Like they have self-modification of their whole outer appearance because it inspires them too.
Mhm.
But most doctors, no, right? Most doctors actually look very traditional. And in part, that's to reassure their patients, but that's also the way many doctors are wired, right? They are wired to sort of follow the rules. So we are hopeful that by bringing artists and doctors together, we might be able to bring the best of both approaches together.
Mhm.
And sometimes this causes a little bit of consternation, which is one of the reasons why the project that I mentioned to you when we first started talking this morning about bringing storytellers and physicians together for this Latinx storytelling podcast series together, I think I'm
Mhm.
really excited about, because we're just at the beginning of this project and we don't know really what's going to happen.
Mhm.
But we think that one of the things we're going to learn is when we work in this way between healthcare providers and storytellers, we're gonna see some really important lessons. So your question is one that I don't know the answer to yet. We're starting to learn as we go. But we know that by thinking outside of the box, artists are pushing us to start reimagining ways we can provide better healthcare.
Practicing outside of the box, what would that look like for the modern physician who cares about rural health and
Yes.
women, uh, medicine and improving quality without really Yeah, this is really interesting. It's making is my wheels are turning. um, how do you and previously going, I guess, on a little more serious topic again with current events. How can art and creativity shed light on the difficulties of social distancing and the strain that it can put on our emotional health, especially
Mm.
in context of what is going on today?
I think one of the most important things that artists do is they listen deeply in two directions. This is going to sound a little bit strange. Um, but since we're such deeply social creatures,
Mm-hmm.
social distancing stresses us out, right? Because we're lonely. Um,
Even those, I hate labels sometimes, but the introverts I think are yearning for that socialization too. Yeah.
yeah, right. I mean, wherever we are on the introvert extrovert scale, it's been so disruptive for us to lose these deep connections to people or to have to shift them so radically to Zoom land. And um, it's very um, alienating to only connect to people through screens and to miss touch and hugs and the ways we even the small things of the grocery store connections we have to people or restaurants and
Yeah.
smaller social interactions we have. Um, and so artists both listen deeply inside of themselves and share those visions. And then they also are just really excellent observers. They listen deeply to others. And so I think they form this really powerful connective bridging function.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so if in non-social distancing time, they do that work a lot, it becomes even more important in times like this where people feel more acutely that loneliness.
Mm-hmm.
So just to tell a little story about this, right now we have um, a lot of need for um, film and television, right, which are sort of our modern equivalent of sitting around the campfire at night.
Mm-hmm.
People want to watch a little TV before they go to bed, or they want to watch a film, and that's ancient. That's as old as our million-year-old species. People, before they would turn in at night, would sit around a literal campfire and kind of go through their day or share stories from their day. Um, and since the 1940s, when television first um, was created, that's television has done that same thing. And so in the pandemic, Netflix has experimented with this, Hulu has experimented with this. They put little things up so you can see, like, hey, on Netflix this week, here's the number one thing that people are watching, or Amazon Prime has shown these as well. And so they're really trying to create a community by showing you, like, here's what other people are watching.
Yeah.
That's new, because that used to be really private information and they wouldn't share that with anyone.
Mm-hmm.
um, but now they're actually trying to, like, give you a sense of that. um, and it's all in this effort to make people feel a little less alone, that they're trying to show you what stories are other people are sharing. um, so I think that that's one way. Storytelling itself, there's this idea that if we know the same stories, somehow we can be less lonely and more together. um, can serve artists themselves, can, by creating those stories, help link us together, make us feel a little less lonely. You
Mm-hmm.
can see this. I don't know if you saw this photograph over the weekend. There was a picture of a graduate, a 2020 graduate, standing in front of a march, and it looked like there was a fire from some kind of rebellion behind him, and he had his cap and gown on. So
Mm-hmm.
there was like a civil disturbance behind him. He had his cap and gown on, and it became like an iconic picture. You could see it being in like a high school textbook 50 years from now.
Oh, wow. I have not seen this photo.
Okay, well those kind of photos also serve as an art that brings us together. You know, the moon landing photo is another photo like that. So photos can sometimes do that.
Mm-hmm.
The story that brings us together, where we all share something. So I would say that both listening and sharing the same story are ways that arts can bring us together in
Mm-hmm.
moments like this. I
Yes.
miss you, Kenny.
Oh, Dr. Hogan, I really miss our class. I miss you, Dr. Jensen, Dr. Ramanujam, and the students. Honestly, the students are so inspirational.
No.
Yeah. I hope dearly that everyone's is well, healthy,
Yes.
and doing the most out of what we can.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's
Well,
good
that
to
was
see
our
you.
last question.
Okay.
Is there anything you would like to leave our audience or viewers with regarding the pandemic, life in general, and finding ways, whether it's in art or other means, to be creative and enjoy life?
I would say at this particular moment, it's really important for people to be kind and be brave by acting even though you're fearful. You gotta act even if you're fearful, because we need each other too much to not be active right now. Have each other's back.
Absolutely. I love this. It gives me a sense of community. When
Yeah.
I think about having each other's back, I don't immediately think about my family, my friends. I think about my role in my community, in the society, whether it's in Durham, in North Carolina, in the United States.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think that concludes our interview. Thank you so much. And
Take care of
thank
yourself.
you. Have a lovely day. Bye bye.
All right. Bye.